A little late to the party. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Barely There podcast. You can follow the podcast at Barely There Pod. I'm Duke Coughlin. You can follow me at that pod guy Duke, and I'm joined as always by the Ayatollah of Capicola. Lucas Perfetti 46. Follow him there at Lucas Perfetti 46 on Twitter. His last name doesn't include the 46, but we still roll on. Anyway, we have a lot to cover. Week 1 is finally upon us. Obviously we get football tomorrow, but Chicago Bears start on Sunday at Soldier Field, week 1. We got new grass. We got a new coach. We got a bunch of new players. We're ready to roll. It's been a long off season, a long training camp. But anyway, we have a lot to cover today. Ted Phillips retiring at the end of the season, something we're definitely going to have to touch on. Bears have an official week 1 depth chart. We have Matt Eberflus naming captains, which I think is relevant, especially because it sounds like we're going to get captain patches on the jerseys, which you just love to hear that. We're going to do a soft preview of the 49ers game against San Francisco 49ers on Sunday at noon. And we got to talk about the injury report because there are a couple of significant names, and there's a couple of names that aren't on there that are being reported to potentially be injured. Kind of a gray area there, particularly with Lucas Patrick. Just kind of jumping right in. We've seen some things with him being played at guard, him being as the officially listed backup behind Cody Whitehair. Once we get into the depth chart, we'll dive into that a little bit more. But it doesn't seem like he necessarily has a set position going into Sunday, which leaves a guy like Tevin Jenkins a little bit up in the air. Lucas, how's it going, man? I know you're excited for Bears football. How are you feeling about this particular situation that we're seeing play out with Lucas Patrick potentially playing right guard instead of center if his hand is not prepared?
Yeah, well, I'm doing well. I'm just hanging out in a hotel room. So if you hear a random door slam and my head jerk, that's why I almost shit my pants a second ago. I literally got so scared. But everything's good, and it's been a long wait, and this is the best time of year, full college football season. I mean, we're talking after tomorrow, there is going to be a football game on that matters pretty much every single day for the next 4 or 5 months. So we're entering the greatest time of the year. Get your sweatshirts ready, bobbing for apples, the whole 9 yards, pumpkin spice if you're a basic person, I guess. I don't want to use any terms. But yeah, no, everything's good. And when it gets to Tevin Jenkins, it's a weird situation, right? The injury report in general, there's a couple names of significance on there for either side, but I don't know. I think everyone dislikes Sam Mustipher so much, and I feel like if they would have released the official depth chart, they would have gotten torched in the comments. And not that any organization should make any decisions based off what the fans think. No one wants to see Sam Mustipher on the field. I feel like everyone echoes that sentiment. So, that's just kind of the way it looks like it's could be heading if Lucas Patrick. I mean, we didn't get any confirmation whether or not he was wearing a cast. It was during individual drills. It was not during team drill. It was Courtney Cronin from ESPN who reported that. I've been looking it up. I haven't seen a ton about it in general. Patrick is listed as the center, but, you could even see under Courtney Cronin's post, people are freaking the fuck out. And I think we echo some of that sentiment because for a rocky path with Tevin Jenkins, I think a lot of us in the fan base noticed a significant difference while he was there to hold down the guard spot. It's just if Lucas Patrick were to come in and start and Mustipher were to start at center, Patrick starting over Jenkins, it's like he didn't really take many snaps. If his thumb, if he's not in a cast, to be putting hands on people, you know what I mean? Then he should be able to snap the ball. If he's in a cast, I totally understand, right? And you acquired this guy to be a leader on your offensive line. So I'll bite the bullet, but it's just there's not enough clarity in the details, and we're still pretty early in the week to have a guttural reaction, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to tell especially with a team like the Chicago Bears that's been kind of notorious about being really tight to the chest when it comes to the depth chart. Obviously we have a new head coach, so we don't know quite how Matt Eberflus goes about that quite yet. But it seems like there is a little bit of a different narrative being thrown around on Twitter. I do want to say that Courtney Cronin has done a pretty good job covering this team throughout all of training camp. So I don't want this come off as like some detriment to her. But we see this tweet about him not being on the injury report, meaning there's no designation for his thumb, but he's being used in individual drills at supposedly a guard. Like that's kind of hard to dictate, at least from what I've known in individual drills. Being as a fat boy in high school, middle school, growing up, like kind of individual offensive line drills, it's kind of hard to designate a position from that. And it also makes me wonder that if he's not being listed on the injury report, is there a cast on his hand? Kind of like you were alluding to a little bit earlier, Lucas. Like those are two very important things because, and I pretty much I'm just going over what you said. You fucking nailed it. Is like, if you're not wearing a cast, like what, and you're allowed to hit people, get to the second level and like get really in on a linebacker, what's stopping you from snapping a football? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was trying to look to see if he had a cast because I do think that
that's big. That
I
is
feel
really
like
big.
the initial depth chart could be misleading. Then, like, I'm not going to throw on a what do you call it, fucking tinfoil hat quite yet, but it just seems a little misleading because then to me, like, it's going to be more daunting as someone who played on the line. Like, it's going to be more daunting on your hand to fire off into a grown fucking man who's fighting with you, trying to get hand placement on you, battling, but like it snapping the ball does not compare to that, right? Like you can easily get your thumb bent back and re-injure yourself if you're putting your hands on someone. So I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks. I don't want to sit here and like go over conspiracies, but if for some reason, like 2-3 weeks in, Mustipher's still playing center, they just released that depth chart for PR to not hear it about Sam Mustipher. And then I'm wrong about, Olin Kreutz. I know we had someone that disliked our Olin Kreutz comment a while back, but Sam Mustipher might fucking he might have just made it through. And honestly, I mean, should we get right into the roster? Because if we're on the topic of O-line, or I'm not the roster, the depth chart, like if we're on the topic of O-line and stuff, like I do want to bring up Larry Borom because as someone who is a 5th round pick from the previous regime, right? They owe him nothing. Like we're seeing a 2nd round pick being moved to the side for Sam Mustipher. So the same way Sam Mustipher, if he really is going to be the starting guy for a few weeks, deserves it, right? Like the same way he really does, like, and the coaching staff saw something in him, Larry Borom does too. Because you think, like, how many guys did we bring in that truly profiled as right tackle? Like Braxton Jones was supposed to be on the right side to start. Tevin Jenkins is a right tackle. Riley Reif is a right tackle. Schofield could play right. Like a lot of guys that were brought in could play that right tackle spot. And he fought everyone off, man. And that's like, I know it was kind of leaning that way through the season. He kind of took that starting spot and stayed there. But even still, like, as a regime that has showed no loyalty to the previous regime in any way, shape, or form, like, that is impressive. So good for him. And I fucking hope he has a great year.
Yeah, no, and I was definitely somebody who was kind of questioning going into week 3 of the preseason, like if he was going to be our legit guy at right tackle, especially because we hadn't seen Riley Reif up to that point. But it's, like you said, man, all the credit in the world to him because it seems like he's really battled him off and really just taken that spot. I feel like this team could easily get away with putting Riley Reif there without getting much blowback if they genuinely thought he was the better player. But it feels like with Larry Borom at right tackle, even with the Reif signing, it feels like he's the best right tackle on the roster. You know what I mean? And that says a lot for a guy, who really had all the potential in the world last year. I feel a lot of people were really high on him, probably even higher than they were on Tevin Jenkins in the first place, just based on like his body and how much work he put in his rookie year to lose the amount of weight that he lost to where he is today. It seems like he's really starting to hit a stride. And really anywhere on the offensive line, man, you got to hope that like we just have it locked down. I really want to see how this Lucas Patrick situation plays out. I don't want to like backtrack or anything like that. I just feel like the Brad Biggs tweet about him like basically saying that he's starting at right guard when that really hadn't been confirmed by anybody else is kind of what threw everybody for a loop. But I feel like in that same vein as Larry Borom, I feel like Tevin Jenkins has earned that spot at right guard. So like, that's why I have it's not even so much against Sam Mustipher at this point, because we've all made our feelings on Sam Mustipher known. It's more that like Tevin has earned this job at right guard. Like you could say he was blocking second team defensive lineman all you want in the preseason. Like he was in my opinion, in my opinion, he was the best offensive lineman on the field. And that's not just me, dude. There are YouTubers, There are analysts who are not Chicago Bears fans or Chicago Bears related that share the same sentiment. They watch the film and they're like, this guy, he is the highest fucking potential guy in your offensive line, and he's showing it right now. It's impossible to take him out of that spot. And it's really hard to take him out of that spot when you've spent so much first team reps on him in the preseason at that position. Obviously, Lucas Patrick is a veteran, and he's a guy that you want to get on the field as soon as possible. But if he's not healthy enough to snap a football, I don't consider him healthy enough to play at right guard to be able to fucking take out a linebacker or a defensive lineman. You know what I mean? So that's where I am with that.
Well, and my big thing too is like it doesn't like it's one of the only things, and this is I guess my first knock on Flus ever, but it doesn't align with what they talked about, like competing to get that spot. Like I know you were injured, I totally understand that, but at the same time, like you're not talking about a guy that was like he. If you look at the previous press conferences, he was coming in as the center. They said they want him at center. There was never a discussion about possibly moving him to guard until recently with his hand being injured, and the speculation about him not being able to snap the ball, which I think we fucking hammered home. Doesn't make a lot of sense. If you can throw a grown man around, you can snap the fucking ball. Unless there's a cast again. But yeah, no, I just feel like it's going against the idea of competing for every single spot and earning your keep around here, right? Like Jalen Johnson had to go through it. Tevin Jenkins, like it's very clearly that, and it's not like he's a fucking $15 million guy a year that you have to get onto the field, right? Like he's making similar money to an Alex Leatherwood who is slotted in as a backup and a developmental piece, right? Like, so I just think it's I don't know, man. We'll see.
Actually,
right?
Touching on that point, a lot of people thought it was interesting to see Alex Leatherwood lined up as the backup right tackle. I think a lot of us, I know I did, expected him to be moved inside, kind of similar to where he was played last year, but it feels like the coaching staff or Ryan Poles even is taking the initiative to kind of be like, hey, we're going to give this guy a soft reset. He was drafted as a tackle. We're going to see if he can really do something there. So that's going to be kind of interesting to pay attention to, because like I have a hard time believing that if Larry Borum goes down, that they're not tossing Riley Reef out there. But if that, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. Like, is that how that plays out? Does Alex Leatherwood take that spot? That's what kind of makes these depth charts interesting, which kind of takes me a little bit farther over to the defensive side of the football. There's not really a whole lot on the offense besides the offense.
Well, I guess I think ESB is big. He's got that set, right? Like Pringle came in with a bigger contract and was supposed to be starting as the number 2 receiver. That's what I'm saying. It just lacks consistency. I'm a very simple man. I like consistency. ESB was brought in as a vet minimum guy that might be on the cut block, and he had a good camp, and now he's starting, right? Because Pringle was injured. They didn't let Pringle take that second spot. And I know it's just a depth chart, and wide receivers, wide receivers are a lot more fluid. You're going to be rotating them in and out. But, like, I was kind of surprised by St. Brown being the number 2. Like, I thought it was going to be Byron Pringle. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
but we can move to defense.
That's definitely something that I was kind of on. I was kind of preaching a little bit throughout the preseason, is that I thought ESB was going to get that spot. And dude, honestly, if you look at the offense, let's call it spade a spade. Luke Getsy's the offensive coordinator, Green Bay Packers guy. Lucas Patrick,
same thing with
even
Patrick,
though he missed the entire, preseason, he's right there. Eknemari St. Brown knows the offense probably better, and the wide receiver concepts of this offense probably better than anybody else on the roster. So, like, even though we didn't see a lot for ESB in the preseason, it's potential that could change. You know what I mean? Like, he did have a pretty good camp. Byron Pringle obviously was brought in to be like one of those guys, but like its familiarity will go a long way, especially on offense. But switching over to the defensive side of the football, this is something I feel like needs to be addressed, because I feel like a lot of people were really kind of getting this confused. So like with the way they have the linebackers set up, so they have Sterling Weatherford behind Nicholas Morrow on the defensive depth chart, and they have Jack Sanborn behind Roquan Smith on the defensive depth chart. And the way this depth chart is set up, it has like Nicholas Morrow as an outside, Roquan as the Mike, and then Matthew Adams, I'm assuming, would be as the Sam.
It doesn't say that on the depth chart, but
it does.
He's in the middle, so it does. And Sanborn profiles way more as a Mike than he does as a Will, so it does seem strange.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting to kind of play out, but I still am of the impression with how they use Jack Sanborn during the entire preseason, they lined him up at every one of those linebacker spots at one point or another. I would assume he's the fourth guy off the bench. If anything happens tomorrow, Roquan or Adams, it's going to be Jack Sanborn in there. It seems like they really like Sterling Weatherford, and I still have the idea that Matty Eberflus got a little bit of intel on this Weatherford guy.
100%.
I'm sure they
Yeah,
liked him before the
100%.
draft, but obviously he was just on the Colts balling out, and he was somebody that they didn't want to lose. He was somebody that definitely wanted to bring on the practice squad. So that's a guy that definitely projects as like a kind of a high prospect guy. Like I don't want to set a ceiling on him, but think like the potential of like Deion Bush when we got him, like just big athletic guy that you feel like you can get something out of one day.
Yeah.
But it really feels like with the way Sanborn has familiarity with the defense that like he's not just Roquan Smith's backup. He is every single one of those linebackers' backups, and they're going to give him a real shot out there if any of those guys either don't play up to performance, which I feel like Roquan easily has that up, or just gets injured. Also, another thing is how we're going to see the cornerbacks get lined up. Obviously, on the cornerback depth chart, it's Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. Those are your 2 ones. How that's going to work without the third cornerback position on this depth chart that Kevin Fishbane shared, we have yet to see. I feel like that's kind of been the entire process throughout the entire preseason. Is are we going to see Kyler Gordon work in the slot and then in 2 cornerback sets work outside? Like, is this going to be a situation where you only bring out an outside corner and nickel? Besides that, Kyler Gordon stays on the field the majority of the time. Is it a situation where they are just starting Kyler Gordon at nickel? But if that was the case, why are they putting him at cornerback like 1? You know what I mean? So kind of, I know you have a lot of thoughts on it, so I'll let you just dive into it because it's kind of interesting how the depth chart's being lined up here.
I feel like that's less mainstream than the Tevin Jenkins shit in the court, or I'm sorry, the Lucas Patrick shit and Tevin Jenkins and stuff like that with Courtney Cronin. That was something that happened in our group chat actually. But yeah, no, I just feel like Gordon does have the ability to play slot. It's clear, and there's a lot of good slot receivers there. But I wouldn't want Kindle Vildor to be on the outside starting week 1. You know what I mean? That's your second round pick. Like if he can't beat out Kindle Vildor, no disrespect to him. I know his fucking, the coaching staff really likes him. It looks like he's the cornerback 3. It looks like he's going to come on the field. And like, to me, it's just like a slot defender in this defense is very similar to like a Bryce Callahan. I know it's a different scheme, but like very similar in terms of you're going to be run support. You are going to be almost like a pseudo strong safety that's covering tight ends. You're going to be covering slot receivers and stuff like that. Now, if you're just moving into the slot to cover elite route running tight ends like Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, you're coming in to cover Cooper Kupp or following Justin Jefferson into the slot. Like we've talked about this before. I think Jalen Johnson does profile as like a guy that is supposed to cover the X receiver. He's not supposed to be moving sideline to sideline. He's supposed to have you up in front of him, get his hands on you, take you off your route, and fucking cover you. Like that is what Jalen Johnson does. Whereas I think Kyler Gordon's athletic profile allows him to really move inside a lot better. But I wouldn't want him to be playing the quote unquote Kenny Moore role because Kenny Moore had like 110 fucking tackles, dude. Like I don't want my second round pick doing that. It's a recipe for disaster. Asking a guy, and he's a bit bigger too than a lot of these slot corners that are like 5'10", 180 pounds. Like he's 6 foot, almost 200 pounds. Like, so he is a little bit bigger, but I don't want him trying to fucking man up and take on fullback blocks as a cornerback. It just doesn't make sense. It's a recipe for disaster in terms of injury. You've seen a lot of elite slot corners be thrown off track, like a Bryce Callahan, who at a time was like playing like a fucking all pro, or even the kid from the Ravens that came over to the Bears, right? What was his name? I think he got cut.
Tavon Young.
Tavon Young. Like he was incredible at a time and just could not stay healthy. So I just don't think it's a good use of resources if you're going to go ahead and have him play like that big nickel position that is there for run support as well.
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of really good points there. You really don't want to chance a guy that you use higher draft capital, chance him getting injured, especially a guy who's kind of been a little on the injured side already in the preseason. Obviously it's a little bit different with a guy like Jaquan Brisker, playing safety. You don't really have a choice. That's kind of just what you sign up
for. He's a fucking monster though. That's different.
Yeah.
Like, he's been living for that contact. Like Kyler Gordon's been on the outside for most of his career. You know what I mean? Like, and he can make good tackles, whatever, but like he's not like I wouldn't compare him to Kyle Fuller as a tackling corner, right? Someone who's going to blow somebody up. Like Brisker's been blowing people up his whole fucking career. Like
Yeah, no,
he's
I'm
a
just
strong.
thinking more. I'm just thinking
Yeah,
more like on the injury side of things, just because like Brisker's obviously, I think he might be playing week 1 with the club, or his club might be coming off, but I know for sure he's going to end up playing. But that's something with Kyler Gordon is like, and this is something you've alluded to in the past, is like, you know, you don't really want to look at it as you use the second round pick to draft a slot corner. You know what I mean? Like, and this is a guy that if you do view him highly as a coverage corner that you're going to be playing on the outside, you don't want to chance him getting injured and, you know, having 100 plus tackles when you'd much rather have him at like that 35 to 40 tackle range maybe, and just playing, you know, just not,
just a
you know,
million
close
fucking
down
defended
coverage, you know what
passes
I
and
mean?
interceptions. That's what we
Yeah,
want him for.
exactly. But I think really, I guess the rest of the depth chart looks pretty up to par to what we expected. The only thing I will touch on, because it seems like quite a few people kind of got a little up in arms about it almost, and it's the defensive end lineups. Chose Robert Quinn and Al Quaddi Muhammad as the starting starting defensive ends. I got to use that 4-3 defense, baby. But with that, I think a lot of people are a little bit confused about how Al Quaddi Muhammad started over Travis Gibson. I'm looking at more as like Al Quaddi's going to be used on earlier downs because I feel like he does bode well against the run. I think he's a better run defender than a guy like Travis Gibson, whereas Travis staying like kind of fresh, being able to kind of do a pass rush either on a second and long or a third down, I think bodes really well for you. And I think that's a really fluid position. You know, I've talked about the wide receiver position outside of Darnell Mooney being really fluid. I think defensive end, when you have guys like Robert Quinn, Al Quaddi Muhammad, Travis Gibson, and even a Dominique Robinson, who's looked really good throughout the entire training camp, like Matt Eberflus and Alan Williams are going to find ways to get them on the field. They're going to make sure that we have fresh pass rushers every single down. It's not going to be a situation where we're paying a guy like Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks so much damn money that they have to be there out there every single down. We're going to be able to have a really good rotation where guys are going to stay consistently fresh, and that could bode really well for a guy like Robert Quinn, who, by the way, just got named a captain, to really kind of take off with continue what he was doing last year. Because even with him playing on a snap count that was like well over what he normally does, especially at this age and at this point in his career and early downs, like Robert Quinn still had a great season last year. So when you think about him being fresh on second and long, third down, that's a pretty scary concept, and it's pretty hard to defend against as an offense.
Yeah, and I think Eberflus's defenses have consistently ranked at the top of the league in terms of rotation on the defensive line. Everyone's going to get snaps. Gibson's going to get a lot of, you know what I mean? Like Gibson might have, I know he started the last 10 games, but was getting rotated in behind Khalil Mack. Otherwise, like, I think there might be so much of a rotation that like Gibson might have near as many snaps as he did last year as a backup and a rotational guy. Cause I do think they're going to be rifling through people pretty regularly. It's just something that he's always done. It's something that he's preached, you know, and up until really the Tevin Jenkins situation, I think he's been extremely consistent in his messaging and following through with that messaging. So yeah, I'm not too worried about it, to be honest. And Dominique, I guess do we want to run into the injury report real quick, because Dominique Robinson, we just talked about him. He was limited in practice, I believe. And then Bayless Jones Jr. was out with a hamstring issue. But most importantly, we're talking about a couple guys. I know Bayless is that dude, but he's still a year or two away from being Julio's actual father in terms of statistical production. So it's not too much of a hit for the Bears. You know what I mean? Like maybe this year because Julio's like 52. But George Kittle, groin injury, did not participate. Definitely going to be heavily monitoring this situation, because you think, you know, I know Ayuk is a high draft pick, but he has not performed to any significant level. And this is coming from a guy who loved fucking Brandon Ayuk in that draft and wanted him to come to the Bears. So George Kittle is that secondary option to Deebo Samuel. You know what I mean? So that would be a huge, huge, huge fucking, like, if he's not active week 1, that's like I already feel 100 times better about the Chicago Bears in general.
Yeah, kind of picking up off that really quick. The options for the Niners, if a guy like George Kittle is out, I feel like they would go to probably a heavy dose of Kyle Juszczyk and Tyler Kroft. Tyler Kroft isn't necessarily your household tight end name, but he's definitely a guy who can he can definitely churn up some yards and get some receptions on you if you allow him to. Luckily, we have Jaquan Brisker and Roquan Smith, who I feel like are going to have a fucking field day if a guy like George Kittle isn't out there. But it's definitely something to pay attention to because that takes it takes a big asset away from their offense, especially like I have to use this on Trey Lance because I use this with Justin Fields all the time. Having that stud tight end to kind of have as a safety valve as a young quarterback is so huge in your development and so huge early on in your career. And Trey Lance not having George Kittle and having it kind of settle for a guy like Tyler Kroft, that's really going to affect their offense. And that's where I would see Kyle Shanahan, not only maybe going to Juszczyk and Kroft, obviously, but like really having to depend more on guys like Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, even Tyron Davis-Price, at running back, and really kind of trying to get that three-headed monster type of offense that they've run so
Wait,
much.
did Jeff Wilson make it? I thought they cut him too. They cut like all of their fucking running backs.
I think Jeff Wilson's on the roster.
Where I could have swore it was just Elijah Mitchell on their roster. Like they cut like Trey Sermon and a couple other guys, but
they definitely cut Trey Sermon, but I feel like Jeff Wilson made it. I can look it up really quick. It says he's still on the team on ESPN, but I'm pretty sure he made the roster.
No, then I'm wrong. I'm just an asshole. Don't worry about
it.
it.
No, he's getting like he's being considered as like a streaming option for fantasy football and everything. He's definitely he's still on the roster.
That's one of those things that like one of my buddies told me and I just ran with it before fact checking him because it sounded legit. So
so you're just basically like 95% of Twitter. So
yeah, that's my fault.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, you'll have a never mind. I'm not even going to go there. But anyway, I mean, with the Niners, it seems like their offensive game plan, like, because I guess that's really the injury report, Lucas. Unless you got anybody else,
there's nothing else. Yeah,
it's a week one injury report. It's pretty clean. We'll definitely we'll get.
I mean, it's Wednesday too. I'm sure other things will pop up.
It's Wednesday, dudes. But yeah, we'll definitely get there.
Final injury reports on Friday or Saturday, I think.
I will say, as far as their offensive line goes, their interior does not necessarily instill fear in me. I saw some people talking about it on Twitter earlier, and the more you look into it, it's Aaron Banks, Spencer Burford, and Jake Brendel in the middle for a young quarterback in Trey Lance, who might not totally have the awareness of a regular NFL pocket quite yet. Obviously, you're going to have guys like McClinchy, who had been limited in practice earlier in the week, but he's almost for sure going to play. And then you have Trent Williams, who, my God, what a fucking Hollywood matchup between Trent Williams and Robert Quinn on Sunday. Like, that's actually like, if you're kind of like me and you ever just focus on one matchup for a little bit in the game, that's going to be a really fun one to watch because Robert Quinn's going to jump into that being really creative. And Trent Williams is going to take that type of challenge, just as
Trent Williams is the first guy rated in the top 5 from the offensive line for the NFL top 100 players. He was mashing people's fucking faces last year, like mashing faces.
Very, very well deserved, by the way.
He's an elite player. They do have that's something that the Niners have, is they have those cornerstone pieces. Like I just saw a quote from Justin Fields. Bears QB on Justin Fields, or Bears QB Justin Fields says he's going to be real with rookie LT Braxton Jones when adversity hits on Sunday. They were asking him about it. He goes, I hope none of y'all, meeting the media, expect him to win every rep against Nick Bosa. So Bosa is one of those cornerstone pieces, right? Like he's an absolute stud. Deebo Samuel, absolute stud. George Kittle, absolute stud. But they do have some question marks as well, right? Like they paid these people big contracts. They're 6-7 years into the rebuild, and it's like they have 1 year where they're fucking making a Super Bowl run, the next year where they're winning 4 games and getting an elite pick. So it's one of those games where I think if we're doing a breakdown of the game in general, I think it can be had. Especially like George Kittle, I'm sure they're just giving him veteran maintenance shit and he's going to play on Sunday. But like, if he's not on that field, I feel extremely confident with Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon being able to limit Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, especially if they're going to be trying to fucking like give Deebo Samuel the ball out of the backfield and stuff. People forget the Bears had that San Fran game last year. They had it won dead to rights and like a couple broken tackles that should not happen this year because of the hits philosophy is really what kind of broke that game open. Like Fields played well. the pass rush was getting to him, and that was one of those games like that in Pittsburgh where you're like, okay, this motherfucker's starting to cook with gas, right? Like he's starting to play.
Cooking with grease, baby. Cooking with grease. Cooking with grease.
I'm saying that's what I should have said. Fuck.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. But I had a coach years ago who would tell us kind of because I playing in high school, I was on a team that was consistently in the playoffs. Like I played in the state championship my sophomore year. So like we were really good at identifying strengths and weaknesses of other teams. And one of the things he would say when we would play like a team with like 5 or 6 like really good players, but not a lot outside of that, attack the depth, baby. Attack the depth. The depth guys, that's really what I'm looking at with the 49ers here because, you know, you have Nick Bosa, you have Eric Armstead, you have Fred Warner. Those are 3 guys on your defense that almost every team in the league would take in an absolute heartbeat. And then you have like Oren Burks, Samson Ebukam, you know, Javon Kinlaw. You know, you have Jimmy Ward, who's on the IR currently. You know, you have some cornerbacks that are a little iffy, you know, not really proven type guys. You know, in Travarius Ward, who's, you know, probably their best corner, I feel like, on their team, and like an Emmanuel Mosley, who showed some promise, but isn't necessarily like a guy you really kind of jump out at. So like there are places where you can really attack this defense, and there's ways you can like really take advantage of their like lack of depth in different areas of the team. But what we can't do, especially on offense, is try to attack those strengths. Like we have to avoid Nick Bosa. We have to avoid Eric Armstead. We have to be able to avoid Fred Warner. So like a guy like Cole Kmet, who we're all insanely high on, might not go off on Sunday. You know what I mean? Just because we're trying to avoid that kind of particular part of the field because we don't want Fred Warner to beat us. You know what I mean? There are situations where, you know, you kind of dare somebody to beat you, but the 49ers are well-rounded enough to have enough guys where it's like you have to really attack at their depth. Like they do have cornerstones, but they're a beatable team. It's just we have to show as the Chicago Bears with a new coaching staff, with a new philosophy, that we are not necessarily a completely beatable team as well. You know, I think the offensive line is going to be in for a real test early on, but I think if they can handle business up front and get to the second level, especially with guards, that's why I really want to see Tevin play, because I feel like he was doing a really good job of that in the preseason. I feel like we can definitely get something going. I just wouldn't expect the offensive output that I feel like a lot of people online are expecting. Like if you think your Chicago Bears are going to go for 38 and the Niners are going to score 3 points, like I have some really fucking bad news for you. Like I see this more as like a 17-10 type of win. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
it's going to be a slobber knocker for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look at like, and it's really a good note for NFL fans and people that follow football. I know I've said that the consistency hasn't been there under Shanahan, but look at how they build. What's up, Spags? Look at how they built their team, like line centric, front seven centric, right? Like, so that is a reason why the San Francisco 49ers are seen as one of those. I wouldn't say they're seen as elite right now, but they're seen as a very good team, even with an unproven quarterback and a couple guys on the interior that are unproven. You know, they have one superstar wide receiver, they have a superstar tight end, but like it's really those pieces on the line. And I think that's where this game's going to be won and lost. Now, our defensive line is severely underrated. Like, I do think Justin Jones is going to have his way with you know what I mean, with whoever he comes in contact with in that interior O line. But I do worry about the Chicago Bears offensive line versus the 49ers defensive line. Like that is a legitimate concern because they're the type of team when those guys are healthy, they make a Super Bowl run. Like, and I think people like, I guess they've come around to it a little bit more because we saw it neglected for those years with Pace and Nagy and like no real investments, but fucking the game is won and lost on the line. It's just that simple. If you were to use every single first round pick for the next 10 years on offensive and defensive linemen, you would never hear me complain ever, dude. Like that is how you win football.
Yeah. And I think, I guess kind of as you were talking, one person that kind of popped in my mind on the defensive line that we didn't even touch on. I think Armon Watts, honestly, depending on how much we use him week 1, he's a guy who can really attack a weak interior defensive line and really get to a guy like Trey Lance and cause him problems. Because that's what he did so well in Minnesota, was kind of really kind of getting that first shot to the gap and really kind of just making issues, kind of making that pocket just hectic for any type of quarterback. And it really helps with a guy like Trey Lance, who, I know we're going to sound like the Chicago Bears fans that are being like, oh, well, our young quarterback's better than your young quarterback. Justin Fields slops dong over fucking Trey Lance. But like, in all honesty, like, Trey Lance just does not have a ton of experience really at either the professional level or at the college level. Like, he projects really well. He's a big guy, has a big arm. Like, he's the quarterback you make in a fucking lab. I feel like
you're hoping he turns into Josh Allen, but he was always
that's exactly where I was going with that point.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that, because like that's exactly what you're trying to build towards. That's exactly why Kyle Shanahan gave up the draft capital that he did to go get him. You know what I mean? That's what you're hoping for, but like, it's still not proven. And I feel like a lot of people really get ahead of themselves, and we see it in our fan base even. Like, I'm a huge Justin Fields guy. Love Justin Fields. Like, he was my quarterback I wanted in that draft. But like, even to a certain extent, our fan base gets a little wild about like how we're already kind of putting him at this level. You know what I mean? And Niners fans are doing the exact same thing with Trey Lance, and Trey Lance has a lot less fucking meat shown on the table. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know quite, like, is it a sirloin? Is it a goddamn cube steak? You know what I mean? Nobody likes that shit.
A Vienna mini cocktail sausage. No one knows.
Exactly. Like at least with Justin, like we've seen like at least like quarter sausage. We don't know how long the sausage is, but like it's kind of lingering there. And we're like, oh,
it's covered by a blanket. Yeah, no, let's get away from the penis innuendo. Yeah, I think because I think you hit on a really good point, because I was someone really, to backtrack, like, I wasn't super high on Fields until you and a man formerly known as Beat On were like, no, he's the best court. Like, you were, I think you had him ranked number 1, right? Like, I had him ranked behind. I really liked Wilson a lot that year. I
really like Trevor Lawrence. So that was like the battle. It was like 1A and 1B in my opinion, but I knew the Jaguars weren't going to pass on Lawrence.
Yeah, for sure. He was one of those guys where it's like he's been getting mocked as the number 1 pick for a few years, and never had the Spencer Rattler type drop off. So, yeah, fucking weirdo, dude. But no, I think, like, I was really high on Lance as well, but I always knew he was a project, and I did not think he was going to go that high. So when Shanahan picked him up, I had a lot of faith in him developing into that person. But like, when you look at Justin Fields, his rookie year, and him going in against the Browns, and I know he was like mocked for saying the game didn't feel that fast in the preseason, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, aside from how bad the scheme was, aside from how bad the offensive line was, like, you could tell, this was a huge step up from the big fucking 10. Now you're talking about a guy like Trey Lance, who's going to be thrown into the matrix trying to dodge a million bullets. And I mean, like, he was known for his full field reads. That's why everyone got really high on him, because his ability to process info. But like, these guys are moving at a lot fucking higher speeds. It's a big difference between some dude at, I don't even know, Wyoming or Robert Quinn. Like, there's a big fucking difference. And when everyone's built on that different level, I always thought it was going to be this like 3-year process for Trey Lance. And I was kind of surprised, because it does seem like the Niners are a little bit more ready to win now and go to the Super Bowl now. But maybe they have their cornerstone pieces and know, like, hey, we gave up this capital. We're going to do a small reset and like stay relevant, but push for a Super Bowl in 2 years or whatever it is when Lance is ready. Because I was a little bit surprised they went with him, just because, like, I almost bought into even though Lance is a perfect fit in his offense, like, I almost bought into the Mac Jones rumors, because I'm like, okay, Mac Jones is pretty ready to fucking go. Like, if you talk about pro ready, it was just the lowest ceiling, but he had a pretty high floor. So I think, I think overall it's just going to be tough for him. And this is a trials and tribulations year for Trey Lance. Like, I mean, I think we're both saying we really like the prospect, but like, he needed time in the oven. He was not ready to go by any means. And he needs to bake a lot more. And one of my buddies was kind of saying, like, oh, I think if, because of the Garoppolo signing and that putting pressure on him, like, I think if he drops, he looks like shit for the first 4 games, they're going to put him back on the bench. Like, that would be so stupid, dude. You cannot give up 3 first-round picks to move up, what was it, 15 spots or whatever it was. Like, you gave up a lot of capital to go get this guy, for you to not let him fucking take his licks and deal with it, you know what I mean, and try to see how he progresses past that. So, I don't know. I think the Jimmy G situation, not to digress too much, but I think it was a benefit for both sides. He didn't want to leave, and he's getting paid actual backup money. If they traded him or cut him, they were going to owe him a lot more money, and they're already pressed against the cap.
Yeah, so couple things here. I don't want to diverge too much into Trey Lance, but I feel like it is important that we talk about him because like he is kind of the X factor for the 49ers heading into this game and really for the entire season. And with, if you do think the Bears are going to go anywhere in the NFC, like we're going to have to deal with we probably going to have to deal with the Niners down the line if that's the route you think we're going to take. Regardless, I feel like in the pre-draft process with all of us, like I feel like we all kind of thought Trey would fall to like the mid to late first round. So like I don't think you were alone on that one, Lucas. I'm pretty sure we actually talked about it like for a while before the draft is like, is he even available at 20 for us? You know what I mean? Like, is a situation where we even have to move up? Like, and to see where he got drafted, it seemed like they went on a pretty strong run of quarterbacks early on. And it was just kind of crazy to see a guy like Justin Fields kind of fall through the cracks. But one thing that I feel like is really being lost and even being lost in Bears Twitter, I know a lot of people are really talking about how much they like Eberflus, and that's something that we've talked about a lot on this show as well, is like Eberflus has so much experience like calling a defense, like compared to where we were with say like a Matt Nagy, where he just did not have a ton of experience calling plays, like heading in. Like I think he had only called like, looking back on the whole situation, just looks
He
even
only
worse.
called like 6 games worth of plays.
Exactly. And it was like a consistent like back and forth between him and Andy Reid where he would take over play calling. Like that's not something that ever happened with Matt Eberflus. Like this is a guy who is going to be very prepared on the defensive side of the football. And like I said, I don't want to discount Alan Williams and his role on the team. He's obviously a defensive coordinator.
Well,
And
he's calling the plays though.
yeah, exactly. But like Matt Eberflus, like you're gonna notice it on the sideline. Like he's gonna be very, very, very bought into the defensive side of the football. So like this is gonna be a team full of guys ready to go. And you bring up that Cleveland game with Fields, like this could be a game where we see Trey Lance's kind of like quote unquote coming out party, or this could be his true blue welcome to the NFL moment. I don't think there's a whole lot in between. You know what I mean? It's really kind of hard to gauge at this point. But I think this defense is going to be prepared.
He did look really rough in the preseason. Not that it doesn't count, but he did not look good.
No, he didn't. It wasn't even anything like schematically, dude. It was his throws just did not look
That's
great.
the thing, right? Like they were like skipping in and shit. It was like, where is the Trey Lance with the cannon for an arm that fucking runs like a goddamn horse? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what maybe they told him to go out and just like put on that facade so everyone thinks he's gonna be bad. And then he just comes out and fucking turns into a helicopter.
That's a wild strategy. I mean, I did see some Niner fans actually compare him to Patrick Mahomes during Patrick Mahomes' like first training camp heading in as a starter. But big difference with that is, Patrick Mahomes was throwing some interceptions early on. He was firing that fucking football everywhere. There was zero doubt about that. Whereas Trey Lance, it's like you're missing guys by a fucking mile. You're hitting people in the feet. Like timing seems really off. Like those are bigger concerns than what we saw with like say a Patrick Mahomes early on. So like any Niners fans.
Well, yeah, and Mahomes came out on a different level. That's there. I think it has to do with the timeline and sitting year one and like that kind of shit. Truthfully, like I don't think there's any similarities. First in their game. But second, dude, that's what Patrick Mahomes did at Texas Tech. He literally, that's what every school in that conference does. They just launch the ball all over the field. So I don't know. I don't think it's comparable. I'm going to go ahead and say if any 49ers fans listen to this, that don't make that comparison. Don't set yourself up for that downfall. You're talking about a top 3 quarterback in the league now. Arguably one, I'd probably have Josh Allen ranked above him and then Mahomes too. But either way, I just think that's that's asinine. Like that's way, way different. Like,
yeah,
I can't even, I'm trying for you 49ers fans. I cannot connect the dots at all for you. But no, yeah. I think we're pretty much exhausted at that point, but Trey Lance, I think is going to struggle to start the year for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So I guess kind of moving in the last 15 minutes of the show here, we did bring it up at the top of the hour. I feel like we'd be remiss not to bring it up because dude, we are the most deli meat guys on Bears Twitter. I don't even think it's fucking comparable at this point. Our boy, the delicatessen owner himself of Hallis Hall, Ted Phillips, is going to be retiring at the end of the football season. And this just so happens to be coming as the announcement of the Arlington Heights Bears like metropolitan freaking like wonderland is coming into fruition. So like
You know what I
it
just
kind
realized?
what?
Right after I killed the real Ted Phillips account, this happened. Did I fucking force this to happen?
Oh, we got the tinfoil hats like
And we're talking within a week of me ending real Ted Phillips.
I
The
mean, Lucas,
announcement is his
have
name.
when you walk outside, do you ever notice some skylines that may be following you?
All I'm saying is, dude, that's a coincidence. Like I was going strong with real Ted Phillips for like 2 years, consistently, like once a month, putting out a tweet about how much I love lunch meat, and then mysteriously terminate it, and now he's retiring. All I'm saying is like could have been some voodoo shit that I didn't even know I had the capability of.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas Perfetti is the voodoo child. You heard it here first. Like he is. If you live in Arlington Heights and you're excited about the Chicago Bears, send Lucas Perfetti like an entire like pork shoulder so he can make all the fucking deli meat that he possibly needs in his life. Some pork butt as well. We all love that gabagool. And I know Sweaty Teddy's eaten quite a bit of it.
Salami, mortadella, the whole fucking 9 yards. I mean, should we just talk about Ted Phillips in general? Like, should we start with the conspiracies about the illegitimacy of him being Virginia's child, or like, because there's so much to unpack, and I've like, this is a victorious day. Let's be real here. Like, reluctancy because he was there for the last hiring of our GM and head coach, which I've heard he took a backseat role and
football.
whatever bullshit.
Not a football guy.
At the end of the day, he fucking made those decisions. So I'm hoping to God he leaves us with a good staff for the first time ever. I just feel like, I mean, this is something people have been wanting for years, right? Like, and I don't even know if Ted Phillips deserves all the hate, but the reality is he has been in control of making decisions that are extremely important, and those decisions have not worked out. I mean, even if you look at the financial side of things, sure, he's made the Bears tons of money, but like, look at like, did you really want him spearheading when we had that conversation of, should they move Pace to president of football ops and have him hire a GM because no one trusts Ted Phillips, and then just let Ted Phillips work on the Arlington Heights thing? Like, Ted Phillips spearheaded the Soldier Field renovation as well, and that went to shit within 10 years. Like, so really, he's just been incredibly good at making money for the McCaskies. And I feel like you could put a monkey in that fucking position and they're going to make McCaskies money because jerk-offs like us are going to keep buying merch and fucking getting hyped up for players that no one's ever heard of before after having 7 fucking waiver pickups. You know what I mean? Like, we got people predicting us to win 12 games, and we picked up 7 guys that other teams were trying to get onto the practice squad. Like, they're on our 53-man roster. And this is someone who has been, I think, pretty realistic and like even optimistic about this team. We've even had, like, I just listened to a recent episode of Pod and Johns where they had 3 members from the national media kind of put some perspective on things that aren't like ESPN talking head, Skip, Coward, like these guys that are supposed to rile people up as their fucking job. And they do a very good job anytime they target the Bears fans. But like, they were kind of like, yeah, man, everyone thinks Fields legit might have it. Like, they're concerned about what's around him, but let it play out type of thing, right? Because I think we are in that very weird space where it's like a lot of guys that got brought in. Like, I like the Nicholas Moreau pickup. I like the Byron Pringle pickup. I like the Justin Jones pickup and the Muhammad pickup. Like, there's a lot of guys I like that they have picked up and draft picks and shit like that. But like, you can't call any of them stars yet because none of them are that established in the league. So we lack star power. But I think that makes the team very dangerous. And even someone like Brian Baldinger came up recently and was like, dude, I think the Bears are going to surprise people. Like, I think they're going to be better than people are making them out to be. And you look, dude, just like as a degenerate, I'll let you pick up after this, but as a degenerate, dude, that win total started at 7.5. They traded Khalil Mack, cut Hicks, cut Goldman, and then it went or decided not to pick up Hicks and cut Goldman, and then it went down to 6.5. Now people have been hammering the Bears under because now it has fallen to 5.5, and it's now minus money to go on the over. So essentially what's happening is everybody's putting their money on the Bears to go under their win total of 6.5, while you have every one of the major talking heads talking about how they're going to be the worst team in the league. Vegas does not lose, dude. You can call me conspiracy theorist for a lot of things, but I am going to guarantee you that they go over 6.5 games. I don't know how many. I don't know if it's just at 7 or just at 8 or they get to fucking 12. I have no idea. But I do know they are going to win more than 6.5 games.
Yeah, so I do actually want to give a preface to the crowd. I did have to listen to Lucas talk about the conspiracy of Vegas for like 3 fucking hours one night, and it was actually really entertaining, and you made a lot of good points.
Have they ever
But
lost on a year?
just to kind of preface that point that Lucas just made, trust me, it's a very long running theme with this freaking guy. He is a complete degenerate, but so am I, so I have absolutely no room to talk. But I guess to kind of encapsulate the Ted Phillips situation, because you kind of started going on like where this team's going to be this year. And we'll definitely get to that before we head out because we have score predictions and we have a record prediction we got to bring out here yet.
Yeah.
But I guess to kind of encapsulate Ted Phillips, in my opinion, because like at first glance when I saw it, like obviously I was stoked. You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, I never thought this was going to happen. I legitimately thought he was going to freaking die at Hallis Hall, right next to his deli manager
with a log of fucking gabagool right
just
next
like
to
freaking on an iron lung, just being fed gabagool through a freaking tube, just because they liquefy
while sitting on the toilet.
Dude, 100%.
And there's no doubt Ted Phillips like eats sandwiches while he shits. Like he's one of those people that has no problem taking a full sandwich into the bathroom.
And he definitely has a personal janitor. Like, where do you think fucking Jeff Hughes gets his sources from?
Oh, dude, he's sitting on the toilet with no shirt on and just like fucking oil and vinegar covered fucking lettuce shreds are falling into his chest hair. No doubt about it. Like all while he's shitting.
Oh, dude, 100%. Like, and like, I thought that's just how it was going to be. Like, I thought like, and I've never been one to wish death on anybody. Like, that's just, I'm not about that. No. I know some fans think they're funny with that. Like, that's not how I've been, but like, I kind of thought like he was going to see it through to the end. But like, the way that I started to look at it, the more I thought about it, the more I got kind of the excitement out of the way, the more I kind of like, this is the best time for him to honestly go. And it's not for the best time for the Chicago Bears. It's not the best time for Justin Fields or whoever you want to look at it, like within the Bears organization. It's the best time for Ted Phillips to go, because when you look at the NFL and you look at people who have been in the NFL for longer than, say, like a player for like 4 or 5 years or maybe 10 years, like it stops being about the money at a certain point. You know what I mean? Because like Ted Phillips has more money than he will ever, like more money than his like third generation of like grandchildren are ever going to be able to spend, just by the amount of money that he's been funneled to by the McCaskies. At a certain point, like it's a legacy business. The NFL, once you're here long enough, it becomes about the legacy. And Ted Phillips, like, I don't want to say Ted Phillips isn't stupid, but like when it comes to this, Ted Phillips, he's not a stupid guy, and he wants to be seen moving forward, especially if this team were to be sold. He doesn't want to see his legacy completely wiped. He wants to be seen as the guy that helped bring in Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, because obviously the organization's super high on them.
He got him to move to Arlington.
He got him their new fucking stadium, especially after how badly the entire Soldier Field thing went down. And I think like really what you aim for at the end of the day, and I'm not saying this is the entire reason he made the decision, maybe there's health, maybe he wants to spend more time with his family, but like at a certain point, you got to think Ted Phillips has got to be like, this is my best opportunity right here to leave on the best possible terms possible. And hopefully it all works for the best once I go. So somebody one day can look back and be like, well, was Ted Phillips that bad?
Maybe he wasn't that bad. Yeah. Right. And like, he is a glorified accountant, don't get me wrong, but you cannot look past the fact that he has made some extremely important decisions and all of those decisions going bad. My first initial thought was, I hope to God they hire a football guy. Like, that seems like a given, but
yeah, I don't even know what's a freaking given at House Hall.
That was my first thought, honestly, and I tweeted it right away. I'm like, dude, I will fucking be furious if they do not hire a football guy, someone that understands football, someone that was either a GM, a scout, something like that, preferably a current president that maybe gets released or something like that. Former player, bring someone back that knows what the fuck is going on to just oversee football operations as well. Because if they go ahead and just hire someone based on the fact that we need you to spearhead the Arlington Heights thing, then we're back at square one, right? Like, because then you're going to have that guy informing some decisions in terms of future hires, and hopefully they Ryan Poles is young, so hopefully they found their guy and he's here for the next 40 fucking years, and we don't have to worry about it. That would be incredible, right?
So
But like,
I also hope that they don't look at Ryan Poles as a potential guy to fill that role, because I feel
no,
like
they
that would
won't.
be just
He's
I
way
was
too
gonna
early in
say.
his career. No,
But
I don't think so.
yeah, I would hope not. But
Maybe
I'm
they
kind
want to like. I had a fan come back at me being like, they have a different structure. Like they're like kind of like, I like that Ryan Poles is the czar of football, and that they have someone separate for financial shit. I'm like, bro,
checks
is
and
this?
balances.
I was like, how successful? Yeah, like there's nothing wrong with checks and balances. How successful has this been, the way they've been running it for the last 40 fucking years? Very unsuccessful when you look at it in a grand scheme of things. We're a
So
lot closer
like
to the Lions than we are the Packers over the last
yeah.
fucking 40 years.
So like the best way I can put that argument is checks and balances. And by that, I don't mean money. I mean a football guy to be able to keep Ryan Poles level headed. And that's not a shot at Ryan Poles at all. People who love Ryan Poles should want this. You need another guy to be like, Ryan, I really like your plan. I like where you're going with everything. Maybe rethink this. You know what I mean? Maybe rethink
That's
that.
it.
Like, I'm not trying to step on your toes. I just want you to really think about this. This is my take. And, people can, they'll probably jump back and be like, well, that's what you have Matt Eberflus for. And it's like, still, you need that guy kind of with a bit more of an ear to the ownership, no matter how you want to look at that, who knows football, who can kind of translate what they want a little bit better than, say, a Ted Phillips guy who just did not know football. You need to be able to have a guy that Ryan Poles kind of has to answer to, because in essence, right now, that is Ted Phillips, no matter how you want to look at that with him being the team president. But like, how much is he really answering to Ted Phillips, because Ted Phillips isn't a football guy? Every fucking football team that's worth anything in this league besides the Patriots, because they fucking have Bill Belichick, have this structure. And it works really freaking well when it's done right, because you can never have too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to great football minds. It's as simple as that. And like, the Bears have been drowning, like we've been drowning for it. Like we've had a good scouting department in the past. Ryan Pace is a pretty good football guy. Ryan Poles is coming off, especially with his draft, looking like a good football guy. Like, but you need guys to kind of be like, hey, not everything you're saying is like 100% there. You're like, you need checks and balances. You need to be able to have somebody go in there and be like I said, your
well, you also
great,
need an
but you need to
ally
rethink this aspect of it.
There's a couple things, right? Like, I feel like you also need an ally to go against the McCaskies with you, because maybe sometimes they might be thinking about the financial part of it, which anyone with a finance background, like a Ted Phillips, will be like, no, yeah, fuck that. You're not firing this coach 3 years early. We still got to pay him 3 years, right? Whereas, like, I don't know. I feel like Pace is a better example, because Poles, at least in his first year, seems a lot more level-headed in terms of spending and stuff like that. But you look at Ryan Pace and you see that offseason he had in 2018. You saw that team was young, vibrant, ready to go, looked like it could be future of success. You just kind of had to stay afloat for the next couple of years and not overspend. And you know what I mean? Like, someone like Ryan Pace kept putting himself up against the cap. Like, how beneficial would have been for him, who I think is a severely underrated GM, and that's why he's pretty much pulling the strings in Atlanta right now. You don't get a job that quick. Like, you might get a scouting job or something like that, but you don't get a job where it seems like you are the pseudo GM, because Atlanta's GM seemed like he was out the fucking door anyways, right? Like, I just feel like it would have been nice to have someone pull him back and be like, hey man, you sure about this Nagy guy? Like, I'll tell George we need to fire this guy and get you someone else. Like, do you really need another? Like, you already traded for Nick Foles and have his contract. Do you really need to sign Andy Dalton, or could you save that money and reset? Like, someone to just pull him back, because when you are the GM, you're so like, and even just a big picture guy, right? Because when you're the GM, you're so in the micro of it that, like, sometimes a macro, like just a separate perspective in any line of work, right? Really, but just to be like, hey man, I know you kind of thought in your head these are the ways that free agency signings could go, but like, if you thought about option fucking E, right? Like, if you thought that maybe this could fall into your hands, like, oh shit, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, just, I'm not saying someone should replace Ryan Poles. Ryan Poles is going to have control of the 53-man roster regardless. He's going to be in control of drafting. Like, that is his job. But a president is there to be, like you said, those checks and balances. And I'd be furious if fucking they didn't hire a football guy.
Yeah, and like you said, it works in all aspects of life, dude. It works between me and you, Lucas. Like, early on before training camp, like you were going nuclear about Ryan Poles. I pulled you back a hair just to see what was going on with training camp. You did the same thing to me when I was going nuclear about Roquan Smith. You pulled me back a little bit. You chilled me out. And like it's one of those things where it's like it's not necessarily that we disagree. It's that like we have to be able to kind of come together to one like understanding of this and maybe get a better feel of how we're both feeling, you know, because like something with Ryan Poles, you know, that we don't know. And like I don't want to speculate necessarily on this, but like how do we know he's not feeling some type of way about the Roquan Smith situation? Whereas if there was a team president there, he'd be like, Ryan, like I've dealt with situations like this, man. You can't take it personally.
He's a
It's
brand new
business.
GM. People forget about that, bro. It's just like most GMs are new, but he's brand new.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where like emotions can play a role early on. And I'm not saying this is how it is. I'm just using a pretty broad example. You know what I mean? Like this is a situation where having a little bit more experience at the presidential role, or even a guy that's played 10 plus years in the NFL who has a great understanding, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Peyton Manning, you know what I mean? Someone like that, like to be able to kind of give that idea of like, hey, you know, Tevin Jenkins, he's obviously pretty pissed with how everything's going on. And again, this is all, I'm not speculating, I'm just making an example, but it's like, this is probably why he's feeling this way. I'm not saying this is why he's feeling this way. And I'm genuinely, I'm 95% on your side, but like you need to scale it back a little bit because at the end of the day, this is either a guy you want on the roster, this is a guy that we just need to move. You know what I mean? It's all just about having that extra mind, an extra mind of a football trusted guy in the same fucking office. So it's not just everyone goes to Ryan Poles for everything football related, because dude, that can be overwhelming and it can really like deter him from what he's trying to do. Because we look at Pace and we look at how many team president type things he had to do, especially with like look at House Hall. You know what I mean? Like that's too much.
Takes up a lot of time.
That's too much on the table, man, for a GM.
No, exactly. No, you're 100% right about that. Yeah, I mean, but you did mention Roquan Smith, and we did not talk about team captain, so we should probably do that before we close.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we are kind of rolling tight on time. We still got to score predictions, but your 2022-23 Chicago Bears team captains. We have Justin Fields, we have Roquan Smith, we have Robert Quinn, and we have Cody Whitehair. Personally, just really quick analysis of that. And obviously, you're going to have the fifth honorary, which is going to be David Montgomery this week, but that would be kind of a rotating thing. I don't know if that's going to be something that's going to be earned. I would be shocked if we didn't see a Cairo Santos wearing one at some point. You know what I mean? Or like even a freaking DHC, which I feel like is another guy, you know, the high character guys. Al-Quadin Muhammad could end up having that patch at one point. But it seems like from what the Bears Twitter was saying that we are going to be getting patches back, which holy shit, dude. I don't know what
I need to see that C on someone's jersey, dude.
I don't know what it is, dude. And that's the meatball in me, and I could admit that, but like that just feels like there's like oomph there, you know?
I mean, why does the military have different rankings and different, you know what I mean? Like there's a kind of a you need order with like your coaching staff should not be the only ones that are well, you know, respected and listened to. Like you should have team captains, and I don't mind them having a rotating one and 4 solid captains. Like that doesn't bother me. I think Justin Fields was truly the only shoe in where everyone was like, it's got to be Fields, and then everyone else was a toss up. I asked the question on Twitter. Some people threw Whitehair out there. I was like, that's not a bad choice. He's been here for a while. Like I thought Robert Quinn was deserving of it, but to me, Robert Quinn seems like the type of dude that's like, you give him captain, he's like, no, I'm good. Like I'm cool. I'm just gonna like he just doesn't seem like a very vocal leader. I know he leads by his play and things of that nature, but just from what we've gathered from Robert Quinn, I just feel like he wouldn't even want that responsibility. But he's taking it, and I'm happy about it because he is a sound veteran that, especially with a very young defensive end room, including Muhammad, who's I think only on a second contract, like they can all learn a lot from this guy. So I'm totally fine with him being there. Like I wanted there to be a defensive line presence and an offensive line presence. I didn't know if it was going to be Lucas Patrick. I thought Justin Jones could possibly do it because he came in like a fucking bat out of hell. I really like the way he played all fucking preseason. He looked great in training camp. Like, just got to stay healthy. I know that's been his biggest issue. But yeah, like I guess it's a long way of me saying like I'm a little bit surprised. I thought Roquan was very deserving, but him holding out, I didn't know if they were going to award it to him. Do you know, was it a team vote or was it a coach's decision?
So it was a team vote, and I actually do want to touch on this just really quick because I did watch Eberflus's press conference today. The way he talked about the Roquan situation, he seemed it seems like he's not
He
holding
knows
anything against
yeah,
Roquan
he knows
whatsoever.
it's the business portion of it.
Yeah,
He
he
knows.
didn't seem like to get sour about that at all. He honestly, he kind of moved past it pretty quick, was talking about like it didn't work out great on his, like we're not happy on his side, we're not happy on our side, but like we're moving forward into the regular season. We freaking love Roquan. All the coaches love Roquan. All the players love Roquan. Like it was a no-brainer type thing. So like
Yeah.
and honestly, that was one that like I felt like I thought him and Justin were lock. I felt like if Roquan wasn't voted a captain, like I feel like all hell could have broke
There's just
loose
not that
there,
many
honestly.
guys from the old team left. You know what I mean? Like, even if he got every vote from everyone on the old team, like, he'd still need to get some from the newcomers, and none of them know him. You know what I mean? I'm sure the
Well, and
linebacker room was pulling for him, and people understand,
that's why
like,
I kind of thought that Al-Quadi Muhammad would get one because I thought he would be the Colts guy. I was kind of in the same boat with Robert Quinn. I thought Robert Quinn 100% deserves it as far as the defensive lineman out there, but I thought you always kind of have that like one guy from the previous that like the coach brought over to kind of set the tone, about what he's all about and whatever. And I feel like Al-Quadi Muhammad was kind of that guy, especially with like the hits principle. But yeah, obviously Robert Quinn's made an impression on both the teammates, and I'm sure the coaches had, whether they say they had say or not, had some sort of say about where those patches went.
Whitehair's a little bit of a surprise, though. I could have seen Quinn and Muhammad, and I wanted offensive line representation. I just didn't know if they would like give it to Lucas Patrick. I didn't know if they would have, if they were going to give it to a rookie, I would have wanted to see it go to Jaquan Brisker, if they had a rookie captain or whatever. But
I think that's something for the future as well.
Yeah, no, he gives me heavy leadership vibes. Like people are gonna listen to him and shit like that. So I don't know. I'm very happy David Montgomery got it this week, but I felt like he deserved a permanent captain role. If one person outside of those guys, like I would have, as much as I wanted to see an offensive lineman get it, I would have rather seen Montgomery get it than Whitehair. And I don't think Whitehair is not deserving. He's been here for a while, never caused an issue, like always been solid, always really gotten shit on because the players around him haven't been great. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't want to like interrupt your point, but like to the Whitehair point, I've always been a Cody Whitehair guy. So like I've never quite understood a lot of the fallacies that come with him. Like I feel like even dating back to 2018, he's probably been our most consistent offensive lineman. And he's a guy that you don't want to move him anywhere, but he's somewhere that's played almost every position since he's been in either college or the NFL. So he's really done whatever he's been asked of. And I feel like that rubbed off on the coaching staff immediately the second they got here. It's not hard to see who that guy is. And I'm sure Lucas Patrick did get some votes or some consideration, but like Cody Whitehair, in my opinion, doesn't get enough credit for how much he kind of encapsulates what you want out of an offensive lineman on the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I guess I should side note. So the last 2 years, the San Francisco 49ers have had 7 captains. This year, they only have 6, and Trey Lance came in 7th. A little bit like we're not a 49ers podcast, but it's a little strange to me. You know what I mean? Like the last 2 years they had 7, and then this year they have 6, and they're exclude. And then Kyle Shanahan was like, "Well, we don't give it to rookies, and this is pretty much his rookie year." So I get it. You don't. But like, I don't know. If your quarterback isn't a bona fide captain on your team, then you do not have your quarterback. That's just my personal opinion. And sure, it might just be the thing for the first year. Like, we both talked about Trey Lance to exhaustion and how we think he has potential, but I guess we should move into predictions now.
Yeah, so we'll do score predictions really quick. Obviously describe why you feel that way, and then we'll do record predictions just to kind of get that out of the way. So personally for me, I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier in the show. I would say like I'm a big 17-10 guy or 21-17 type guy. I feel like 24-17 Bears. I'm obviously never going to pick against the Bears in this podcast. I'm just going to get that out of the way. I feel like if we do win, that's our best path to it. Get the offense involved early on, get David Montgomery involved early on. I would like to see a heavy running attack, especially towards the left side of their defensive line. I feel like there's a lot to expose right there. I feel like if you get a guy like Darnell Mooney in one-on-one situations, you can definitely work that as well. I'm interested to see what Ecknemarius St. Brown can add to this offense, potentially in more of a actual offensive role compared to vanilla offense we were kind of running there for a while. As I said before, I'm a huge Cole Kmet guy. Like, I still feel like Cole Kmet's going to be one of the best tight ends in football this year. I don't think he's going to be targeted heavily, but I still feel like he can have an impact in this game because he's going to be working with Fred Warner quite a bit, kind of shadowing him. But 24-17 feels like the best way to go about it. I feel like this defense is going to make Trey Lance have a real welcome to the NFL moment, but I feel like Kyle Shanahan will kind of lock it up running the football at a certain point in this game. And I don't think they'll have like an insane amount of success against us on offense, but I don't think they're gonna blow us apart or anything like that. So
yeah, and this is something that I said. This is a hard game to call, right? Like, because I will pick the Bears to lose against the Buffalo Bills. I have too much faith in them to like really pick against them, like for games like the Lions or the Falcons. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way. But like the Bills, be real here. If the Bills are clicking on all cylinders, they're going to beat the fuck out of the Bears. Like, it's just the way it is, right? But with that being said, like when I looked at the schedule to start the year, I was like, San Francisco 49ers week 1 is the most ideal situation. First of all, the most upsets always happen on week 1. Always, the Saints beat the fuck out of the Packers last year on week 1, and then they rifled off like 13 wins. So you'll always see the most upsets on week 1. The Bears are predicted, or they're getting 7 points currently. So Vegas is saying that they're going to be up by a touchdown. And again, the public is what is moving that line, and sharp bettors and stuff like that. Vegas doesn't lose. I think it started at like 4.5 or something like that. But with all that being said, I think it's a very winnable game, especially with it being Trey Lance's first game. I'm going to go with the Bears 20 or the 49ers 17. And the only reason why I'm doing that, and something that I would like to see, is
toss me the Bears score one more time. You cut out just a little bit.
17.
You cut out again.
27-17.
27-17. All right. I don't know why like your mic keeps
because you got so much fucking Crisco in your ears. It's like you can't hear. But well, just cholesterol covering your vocal cords.
Shut the fuck up.
But what was I gonna say? I actually want to see, because like you said, like attack their depth and attack their weaknesses. Like they are nowhere near as sound on the back end as they are on the front end. So I just want to see a lot of moving pockets. Definitely run the ball to set up the pass. And there's going to be a lot of games where I'm like, just pound the fucking rock. Just keep it between the tackles. But in this particular game, I would like it to be Fields' coming out party. Like I would like him to keep building on that momentum. I don't need him to throw the ball 45 times, but I do want him to be throwing the ball in a lot of important spots, and to set himself up, as well. Like we've seen it from Getsy already. Running the ball on first down, running the ball on second down, and throwing the ball on third down is not his strategy. That was more of a Matt Nagy thing, right? Like get stuffed, fucking go to hell, punt. We've seen it a lot of mix up with the tempo and, hey, we're going to throw the ball on first, second, and third down, but to start the next series, we're going to run the ball 3 times. Like we've seen that mix up. So definitely you're going to need to run the ball to set up play action pass, because they do have those pass rushers. But I want them to move that target and let Justin fling that motherfucking pigskin, because I do think while everyone hates the Chicago Bears receivers, I brought up an incredible point. Like, who are their big names on the back end? Their big names are on the front 7. So I don't want to be like getting into this crazy slobber knocker with them if Justin Fields is able to expose them via the air. That's my rant. 27-17.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like that's obviously it's really close to what I was calling, but I feel like that's kind of like the betting line ideas in our heads. Those are usually kind of like the base scores kind of setups.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but I reversed it and gave the Bears an extra 3 points.
Still could.
Oh yeah, I could for sure. The odds on that are like probably like $20 to pay fucking 100.
Yeah, but I mean 27, that still keeps Cairo pretty busy. So I mean that works out pretty well.
3 touchdowns, 2 field goals. It can happen.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's really, really realistic. And, I feel like you kind of touched on a lot of the points I did, especially with like getting the wide receivers in space and good one-on-one matchups on the outside, because their secondary is definitely something that can be exposed.
Yeah.
But all right, so dude, we are running pretty long, but we have had an absolute metric ton of stuff to cover. So I'm actually glad we've kind of rolled through this the way we have. Final score predictions. We kind of touched on it a little bit last week. I kind of put up
Final record.
I kind of set up a window. Oh yeah, final record predictions. My bad. I kind of set up like a window of like 7, 8, 9 wins. I'm just gonna stick right there in the middle. I will say 8 and 9. Normally this would be 8 and 8 for me. Because I feel like 500 is honestly the ideal spot for this team personally. But I always think of that 7 and 9 Lovie Smith team right before they took off in 2004. A lot of people look at that 7 and 9 season at the time and they're like, okay, this is something we can kind of work around. This Lovie Smith guy ain't so bad, because I remember when we hired Lovie, everyone was like, this guy's first name is Lovie. Like, what the fuck is that all about? You know what I mean?
Well, it's because everyone wanted Saban, and they ended up not getting him. And like their consolation prize was the best coach they've ever hired.
Yeah, exactly. And Nick Saban was never going to come work in freaking Chicago for 8 months out of the year anyway. But yeah, I feel like this is a season where we can really build off of something. I'll talk about it throughout the course of the season, especially with the way it goes. But I'm not focused on winning this year. Like, I'm not focused on making a playoff run or anything like that. Like, if we make a wild card, that's awesome. You already know I'm going to be freaking all over that, hammering the Bears to 1,000 every single game we're in the playoffs. But like, I just want to see a lot of progress, because I feel like if we hit that 8 and 9 mark, enough guys that we needed to see took a step forward. To where
specifically Justin Fields,
to where we have all this freaking money next season to make this run, to be like, we're going, you know what I mean?
Like, we're a playoff team next year after the offseason, right?
And we have a first round pick.
I was actually really on 8 and 9, and I was teetering between 8 and 9 and 9 and 8 just because I didn't want to be a meatball. I was going to go with 8 and 9. But now I'm going to be a meatball, 9 and 8. They're going to get that last wild card spot because it's a weak fucking NFC, and they're going to fucking build on it. Like, I have a lot of faith in Matt Eberflus over everything, and I think Justin Fields kind of answered some of my questions in that last preseason game. Could completely change with what's it called, but as we were alluding to before, if this team wins 8 or 9 games, that means Justin Fields probably took a large step forward, unless this defense is the number one defense, which I don't anticipate. I expect them to be good, competitive, and keep them in games. But with the supporting cast surrounding Fields, not that it's as dog shit as fucking the national media is out making it out to be, but they do not have that next level of, okay, we have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. Like, they don't have that next level of weapons. So I think it would mean Justin Fields takes a huge step forward, and that's all that matters. That's literally the only thing that matters. Is Justin Fields going to be great? Does Braxton Jones look like he's going to pan out at left tackle? Some of these young guys. Is Kyler Gordon the cornerback of the future, the cornerback one? Because drafting him there, I expected him to become the cornerback one. Not in his first year, but at some point take over that role where he follows the best receiver on the team.
Yep, and I'm on board with a lot of that. I also have my pretty confident belief that Roquan's going to translate to the 4-3 defense, and that will block up the inside of our defense, because hopefully Ryan Poles decides that's the best time to pay him. But that's a conversation for an entirely another day. We've already gone pretty long. While we got you guys, though, we do want to make an announcement that moving forward into the season, we are going to be doing our post-game shows on Mondays. Mondays are going to be the post-game show, and then the preview, injury report, everything kind of similar to what we've done with this show is going to be on Thursday nights, okay? We're going to be kind of shooting probably for like 6:30, 7 o'clock. We'll give you a pretty strong time that we're going to be going once probably the night of, and once we get into a groove of it, we're probably going to stick with the same time. But yeah, we're going to be trying to do 2 shows a week. Good chance I might toss a space up for post games every once in a while, just so we get that fresh reaction, whether it's just me, whether it's just Lucas, or something like that. Don't quote me on it. Some weeks we might have it, some weeks we might not, like if we get mollywops 38-3, like I'm probably not trying to talk about the Chicago Bears, and because otherwise I'm going to end up, having a heart attack and going to the emergency room. But yeah, so Mondays and Thursdays moving forward. Really like the support we've been seeing on the podcast. The numbers don't lie. We're going to be hitting a pretty good milestone after this episode gets listened to on most podcasting platforms, which I'm really excited about. And I'm really excited to start 2022-23 season, Lucas. You know, I feel like we've been putting in
putting in
a lot of work on this podcast throughout the entire off season, and I'm just ready to get going, man. I'm ready to get kind of in the swing of it.
Like when training camp, like that was a huge milestone, but now it's the real deal. Like there's no more practice runs.
We have important football to cover every single week.
Count every single week, baby. So we're back. Hopefully you all have wonderful fantasy football seasons and gambling seasons and all of those things. But I mean, that's all we got, right, dude?
Yeah.
Hour 21's not terrible, by the way.
What's that?
It's not terrible. We've had shows in the past that went like 2 hours. So
hour
21's a little long. We try to keep it under an hour, but
honestly, this is the week one, man. If there was just a lot that happened this week, so we'll be able to segment this a little bit more into 2 shows. Hopefully that'll probably hover within more of that 45-minute to hour kind of golden area. You know what I mean? So, but all right. That's all we got. Hopefully we are talking about a Chicago Bears win next week when we talk to you next Monday. Be on lookout on my Twitter for any spaces or anything like that. I'm going to try to figure out how to do it through the actual podcasting account as well. But the last time I did it, it was just giant nightmare. But we'll get that all figured out for you. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Google Play. Honestly, I just updated the link tree, and we are available on a metric ton of freaking podcasting platforms. So wherever you listen to your podcast, whether you listen to it on Apple, Google, Spotify, or you listen to it on Rock, it don't matter. It's on there. I'm Duke Huff, and you can follow me at that pod guy Duke on Twitter. As always, I'm joined by Lucas Perfetti. You can follow him at LucasFerretti46. And this has been Barely There. Bear down. We'll see you guys on Monday.
Bear down.